Well, you touch upon an interesting point because when you started out, like you say, house music, dance music, it was different than it is now.
Yeah.
Now it's grown so much. It's so popular. It's pretty much mainstream, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, how have you experienced this throughout the years?
I mean, like, you go through different stages. So in the beginning, like when I was really still a young teenager, I absorbed just the hits. Like, and we would buy these CDs. There was this compilation called "Turn Up the Bass," I believe it was, and "House Party," and some DJs they would put like 40 of the biggest club tracks. Like, and I would know every track from that compilation, like back and forth, and know what kind of clap they used, and like really nerdy. I would really get into it, you know. And then once I started producing, and especially when I started DJing, I wanted to be as far away as possible from commercial. Like commercial was not cool to me.
Sure.
Not because I had this rule in my head, but simply because if I would hear a track being played by 2 or 3 DJs, like I would totally not be interested in playing that track. I just wanted to do my own stuff. But that changed over time because as I started to DJ more and more, I also noticed that people actually like to hear stuff that they know.
Sure.
So I could play a whole set of stuff they didn't know, but there would be a point in the set where there would be some girls going like, you got this track, you got this, you know? And I also noticed if I would play this or that track within my genre, that it would help my set a lot. So this is how you develop as an artist and as a person and as a creative type and all that, yeah.
So in that sense, do you think it's a good thing that it has become quite accessible, not only for the consumer but also for the person making it? Because like you said, you needed a pretty good setup back in the day, but now you can have a laptop and...
You can make, I think I never really tried it, but I honestly think I know you can do better now on your telephone than on the studio I used to have, that I used to work my ass off like during summer back then. And I think that's good. Like I love it, and I think it's great that kids, if they're, I don't care if they're 12, but if they have good ideas, that they can just work instead of hanging around and doing bullshit. They can be creative and do stuff. I think it's wonderful. The only thing is, since it has become so accessible, the output of everybody who's doing it has become so huge. So first of all, it's becoming, there's tons of tracks and a lot of good ones, but there's also a lot of stuff that, at least for me, is not really relevant. And it's also becoming, like, on one hand, it's becoming easier to create output, to create the music you want to do. But on the other hand, it's especially when you're starting, it's very hard to get your foot, how do you say, between the door, because there's so much competition. But that said, I think it's great that that you are not, that people are not restricted by money. So now all of a sudden you see like young producers from ghettos in Africa and stuff coming with the craziest stuff, and they wouldn't have been able to do that years back, where you really needed like a big table and all that. Like now they get some secondhand computer, and you don't need much. Like I can make like a dope beat on a computer from 1999. You know, so so I think that's cool.
Okay. Well, you mentioned an interesting word, relevant, and because you have been doing it for quite a while, and like you say, there's so much out there. How do you stay relevant? I have one release recently, the Voce EV.
Voce, yeah.
Voce. So how do you stay relevant with that? For instance, that in mind.
I mean, this is one of the things that artists deal with. And some are better with it than others. I think some artists are really good in giving the crowd what they want, or really sensing, like some they just excel in just giving the crowd what they want, and maybe they like it themselves, or they don't, but they just give the crowd what they want. Others, they just do it naturally, and they feel what's happening, and others like me they're sometimes struggling with that a little bit. So, for example, when the EDM was at its peak, for me it was kind of hard to find my way. I mean, I love my job, I love to work in music, I love to make people happy on the dance floor and all that, but in that time it was difficult. So that's when I started experimenting with, let's say, big room drum tracks like Azumba, and then later with the stuff I did with WeWack, like On Your Mark and Trouble. But it wasn't easy, and now that the time has come for, like, that things are slowing down a little bit, and the sound is getting more open and a bit more friendly. So now again I can do stuff like Para Voce, and I mean, we're back at Afro Brazilian stuff, so that's very close to me. I feel that. Years ago I tried to learn capoeira, very unsuccessful, unfortunately. I love it, but I'm just like, that's not where my talents are, unfortunately. But that's where I heard those capoeira songs, and yeah. Well, that's what inspires me.
That's what I was going to ask, because do you have to, well, not necessarily be in Brazil to write this music or to compose this music, but is that in your mind? Do you have to be in a certain mood when you're making music like this that has a very distinct...
I mean, there's two questions for me. First of all, do you have to be in Brazil to make that music? I think you have to, if you want to make any kind of music that is not from where you are. Let's say if you want to make hip-hop, I don't think you have to be in New York, but if you want to be a serious, or in LA or wherever in the States or in the UK, but if you want to be a serious hip-hop producer or rapper, you have to know what's going on, and you have to understand a bit of history. So, like, if you don't know who Tupac is, or Dre or NWA, like, you're not gonna be, I think it's gonna be very hard to be a successful rapper. Well, the same for any kind of music. So I'm not gonna say I'm an expert on Latin music, but I've been in Brazil, I've been in many of those places. I speak the languages more or less in some cases, and I love it. And I think that's what works. I don't need to be in Brazil. Actually, I think if I was Brazilian, I wouldn't be making the music I'm making now, because it's really this, to put it in a nice word, cross-fertilization of ideas. That's what makes my music, and also what's happening globally. If you look at Major Lazer and what Snake and all these guys are doing, that's globalization in a good way for me.
Finally then, because I think my time's up, but what's next? What are you working on now?
Well, I just put out a remix of my, let's say a new remix of Rap das Armas, which is a track I remixed like 8 or 9 years ago. And then it was a huge hit, I don't know, back in 2007, 8 or something. Then for a while, because it was such a hit, I stopped playing it, everybody stopped playing it, it was an overkill. But lately I was like, every now and then putting that a cappella back in my sets. And it worked so well that I thought, you know what, let me make a new version. So that's out now. I also recently remixed like a classic from Suriname. Suriname is a country like next to Brazil. It used to be a Dutch colony, so there's strong ties with Holland. And there's this one song which is just like one of the absolute classics. Like if you go to a wedding and you put that song on, like grandma and grandchild will be dancing, you know. So I remixed that one. That's gonna come out somewhere in November. Whole lot of collaborations. Just keep on working.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.